He fell. I watched him fall. The wax gave way first at the shoulders. Slowly, the way something inevitable always moves slowly when you are hoping you are wrong. The feathers came apart in the updraft, scattered across the Aegean like evidence, and the boy sank without a sound I could hear from where I stood. The sea took his name. That is what we did with our dead. What we did not do, what no one has done since, is tell you what actually happened before he reached the sun. You have heard this story. You have heard the wrong version of it. I need you to understand Daedalus before I tell you about his son. Daedalus was the finest craftsman who had ever lived. This is not sentiment. It is measurement. He understood structure the way I understand strategy, as a language with its own grammar, its own inevitabilities. When he built something, it did not merely function. It reasoned. His work had a quality of thought inside it that made other men feel, obscurely, that they were being judged. He was also someone who had thrown a child off a cliff. His nephew, a boy called Perdix, 12 years old, had come to study under him in Athens. The child could see things. He had invented the saw by watching a fish spine. He was already, at 12, beginning to move past where his master was. Daedalus could not tolerate that. I was there when it happened. I caught the boy before the ground did, transformed him, mid-fall, into a partridge. A small grey bird that has never, since that day, built its nest anywhere high. That nests only on the ground, close to the earth, as if some knowledge lives inside the body that the mind no longer remembers. I saved Perdix. I did not save him entirely. Daedalus was exiled from Athens for the murder. He fled to Crete. He brought Icarus with him. The boy had not chosen any of this. He rarely would. King Minos had a problem he needed solved quietly. His wife had given birth to something the palace could not acknowledge, and the world could not be allowed to see. It required a specific kind of architecture, a structure designed not to contain something physically, but to make it disappear, to make a living thing into a rumour, then into silence. Daedalus built the labyrinth. I have seen many things built by many hands. The labyrinth was different. It was not a maze in the way people imagine, crude walls and dead ends. It was a work of psychological precision. Every corridor in it promised, almost, to lead somewhere. Every turn was designed to break the confidence of the thing inside, to make it doubt its own direction until movement and stillness became indistinguishable. Daedalus understood enclosed spaces. He had spent his life designing them. When it was finished, Minos recognized the other problem. Daedalus knew everything. The labyrinth's layout, the creature's existence, the queen's transgression. He was walking through the world carrying secrets that a king cannot permit to travel. Minos imprisoned him. Daedalus and Icarus were moved into a tower. Comfortable, provided for, overlooking the sea from a window they could not open from the outside. Icarus had grown up in workshops, then in foreign corridors, now in a tower. He had seen the sky through glass his entire life, watched birds at a distance, measured the horizon from windows that belonged to other people's architecture. He had never once stood in a place with no ceiling but the actual sky. He was not imprisoned. He was a craftsman's son. From the inside, I am not certain that distinction was visible. Daedalus was not a man who endured helplessness. He began watching the birds that landed on the ledge, studying how the feathers overlapped, how the hollow bones distributed weight, where the lift actually came from. He took things apart in his mind until he found the transferable principle. He always found the transferable principle. He collected feathers. He melted wax. He worked in silence, the kind of focused silence that means a man has already made his decision and is simply executing it. He built 2 pairs of wings. He explained them to Icarus carefully. The sea's moisture below, too low, and the feathers would grow heavy. The sun's heat above, too high and the wax would give. A corridor between those two extremes, a narrow passage with exactly one safe path through it. He had built those before. He told Icarus to follow him, stay close, trust the design. They leapt from the tower, and Icarus flew. I want you to stay with that for a moment. The moment the story always rushes past to get to the fall. Every painting, every poem, every classroom version of the story treats what came next as a mere prologue to disaster. It was not. For a moment that I watched and have not stopped thinking about, Icarus flew. He felt the updraft take him without walls on either side of it. He felt the sun on his face with nothing between them. He felt the Aegean spreading below him like a truth he had heard described his entire life, but never verified with his own body. He felt the wind, which belonged to no one, which had no architect. He was, for the first and only time in his life, completely free. And then he flew higher. They call it arrogance, hubris, the fatal pride of a boy who forgot his station and reached for what gods alone were permitted to touch. I do not call it that. I was watching his face. What I saw was not pride. What I saw was a boy who had spent every day of his life inside someone else's design. His father's workshop, his father's exile, his father's prison, his father's plan for escape. And who, the first moment he had the entire sky available to him, could not make himself choose only part of it. He was not flying toward the sun because he wanted to be divine. He was flying toward it because no one had ever told him he was allowed to go wherever he wanted. And in that one moment, for the first and only time, he believed that he was. The wax softened, then let go. He reached for something. There was nothing there. He fell. I watched him fall. Daedalus landed safely in Sicily. He buried what the sea returned. I will not describe what that was. And built a temple to Apollo. He hung the wings above the altar and never flew again. This is always presented as the grief of a father, as tribute. What I know is this: Daedalus continued working. Immediately, he built mechanical devices for the king of Sicily. Elaborate, brilliant things. When Minos eventually came looking for him, he engineered a bathing system that scalded the old king to death in his own tub. He was quite good at solving problems. He kept doing it. And somewhere on the cliffs above the water, in the versions of this story that remember the older parts, a partridge watched from a ledge that day. Perdix, my partridge, the nephew who had also fallen from a different height, because of the same man, watching the son receive what the master had arranged for the uncle years before. I had transformed Perdix to save him. I have asked myself, in the time since, the considerable time since, whether I saved him from the fall, or whether I simply gave him a different shape in which to carry it. I have not finished deciding. You were told this is a story about a boy who flew too high. It is a story about a boy who had never been anywhere at all, and who, given one moment of open sky, did not know how to want only a little of it. He had no practice in that. No one had ever given him anything to practice with. His father designed perfect enclosures his entire life. His father built cages that worked exactly as intended. His father also designed the one escape, and included in his instructions a corridor of safety so narrow that a boy who had never tasted freedom would have needed remarkable discipline to stay inside it. Daedalus landed, built more things, died old. Icarus has a sea named after him. There is a version of this story where that is a punishment. There is another version where that is the only kind of permanence a craftsman's son was ever going to be offered. I have thought about which version is true for a very long time. I have not settled it. History calls it myth. I call it memory.